How in the world do you end up leading a research team at Google DeepMind at just 26 years old without a PhD? I mean, it's a question that pretty much breaks all the rules of a normal career in tech or academia. Today, we're going to reverse engineer the career of Neel Nanda to figure out the exact blueprint he used to do it, and in one of the most complex fields in AI, no less. All right, let's dive in.
It out that plainly. It really hits you, right? The normal path, that takes 4 to 6 years just for the PhD program. Nanda did the whole thing in 4 years flat, right out of his undergrad. Look, this isn't just a story about a smart guy. It's a story about a totally different way of learning, of building a career, and frankly, of making your own luck. So the big question is, how? Well, the answer starts with understanding the incredibly specific field he decided to jump into. He works in this field called Mechanistic Interpretability. Now, the best way to think about it is like being a brain surgeon for an AI. So instead of just looking at what an AI does, its inputs and outputs, these researchers literally crack open the model to look at its internal wiring, trying to figure out how it's actually thinking. It's a really young, fast-moving field, and that, as you're about to see, was a huge part of the strategy. So here's our roadmap. We'll start with his unconventional path, then we'll unpack his learn-by-doing blueprint and his modern toolkit. After that, we'll get into how he made his own luck, which all leads up to the biggest lesson of all, this mindset he calls agency. Okay, section 1, the 26-year-old team lead. Let's really look at just how different his journey was from the path most people take. So on the left, you've got the standard playbook, right? Get a PhD, publish in fancy academic journals, and follow a research path that's already been laid out. Then on the right, you have Nanda's path, no PhD. Instead of just formal papers, he was sharing his work constantly through public blog posts. He didn't jump into a crowded field. He picked a new, fast-growing one where, as he puts it, you can become one of the most experienced people in the world, like extremely fast. And most importantly, instead of learning theory for years before actually doing anything, his entire philosophy was to learn by doing.
And this brings us right to his learn-by-doing blueprint. This is the real engine behind his crazy fast progress. It's a philosophy that basically flips traditional education completely on its head.
Think about it. Most of us were taught to master all the theory before we even dare to try something practical. Nanda's advice is the polar opposite. Learn just enough to get started, and then immediately, like right away, dive into doing the real work. The deep learning happens because you're working on a real project, not in preparation for one. And he actually breaks this down into a super actionable plan. Stage 1, 1 month max, just learn the ropes. Don't go deep, go wide. Get a feel for the landscape. Stage 2, for the next few weeks, do a bunch of tiny 1 to 5 day throwaway projects. The goal here isn't to create a masterpiece, it's just to practice and get feedback fast. Only then, in stage 3, do you start working in 1 or 2 week sprints on real projects. And, this is key, you only continue with the ones that are actually showing some promise.
It all comes down to one core idea. Mechanistic interpretability is an empirical science. It's all about running experiments. You can't learn it from a textbook any more than you can learn to swim by just reading about water. You gotta jump in the pool and get your hands dirty. That's the #1 rule.
Okay, section 3, a modern researcher's toolkit. So, learning this fast, it requires the right tools. And believe me, it's not just about software. A huge piece of this toolkit is leveraging large language models, but probably not in the way most people do. Nanda uses them as an active learning partner, almost like a personal research tutor that's available 24/7. So the question is, how do you actually do that effectively? He's got a whole list of these advanced techniques. Like, don't just ask for a summary, explain the concept back to the LLM in your own words and ask it for feedback. To avoid those weird AI hallucinations, ask the same question to a few different models, and then ask one to combine the best parts of all the answers. You can even turn it into a tutor by asking it to generate coding exercises for you. And if you're someone who thinks out loud, just use voice dictation. He says LLMs are surprisingly good at understanding messy, rambling thoughts. But the most clever one is the last one. You know how LLMs are designed to be super agreeable and helpful? Well, that's terrible if you want honest feedback. So, you use what he calls an anti-sycophancy prompt. You basically trick it into being critical by pretending someone else wrote your text, and you want help ripping it apart. This prompt right here is a direct example he gives. It's kind of funny, but it is incredibly effective. And the most important tool isn't software at all. It's a mental model. He says you should adopt this mindset of extreme skepticism. Your default assumption should be that your own results are wrong. And then he adds this brilliant little twist. The more exciting and cool a result seems, the more likely it is to be false, simply because most true results are actually kind of boring. Section 4, how to make your luck. Okay, so having the skills and the mindset is one thing, but how do you actually turn all that into a real opportunity? Nanda's approach is all about actively and intentionally making your own luck. In a field that's moving this fast, a degree just proves that you could do good work 5 years ago. A portfolio of public projects, blog posts, and code, that proves you can do good work right now. This becomes your best credential, your key to opening doors. But how do you get the right people to even look at it? This is one of the biggest hurdles for so many people, the cold email. You've done all this great work, but how do you get a busy researcher or a hiring manager to even notice you exist? Nanda gets a ton of these emails, and he has a very clear formula for what actually works. First, prioritize ruthlessly. Assume they're going to stop reading at any second, so put the most important info right at the top in bold. Don't ask for some huge commitment like mentorship. Start small by asking for quick feedback. Here's a pro tip. Email the junior researchers, not the famous team lead. They have more time and are usually just as helpful. And you have to signal competence by linking to your work or asking a genuinely smart question. And finally, he has this really clever trick for framing your value. He suggests using a line just like this. See what it does? It acknowledges that they're busy, and it reframes your bragging as just trying to help them prioritize. It's a super tactful way to put your best foot forward immediately, and it's a tool you could literally use today. This is a perfect example of proactively making your own luck. And that brings us to our final section, which is really the core mindset that powers all of these other strategies. It's all about agency. Agency is this fundamental belief that you are not stuck with the default options life gives you. When Nanda finished his undergrad during the pandemic, the defaults were grad school or a finance job he'd been offered. Agency was him realizing, as he puts it, that sometimes there's more than two options in life. It's about seeing the world as something you can act upon, not just something you have to react to.
And you can see this mindset in action across his entire career. Instead of just picking between grad school and finance, he created a third option, a gap year, where he did multiple internships to really test the waters of AI safety. He didn't wait for a perfect senior role, he joined a young team at Anthropic early on. And when his team lead at DeepMind stepped down, he didn't just wait to be asked, he stepped up. Every single one of these steps was an active choice to shape his own path.
At the end of the day, his entire story really just boils down to this incredibly simple but really profound idea. You don't always need permission. You don't have to follow the path that's laid out for you. You can just decide to learn something, or build something, or reach out to someone. You can just do things.
Look, this explainer isn't just about how one person built a really cool career. It's a case study in a mindset of acting, of experimenting, and of shaping your own opportunities. So the final question really is, what's stopping you?